What happened to your arm?
Oh.
I need you to calm down, sir. You're causing a scene.
Get out of this ER before I call security. The words shot through the hospital waiting room like a gunshot. Patients froze mid-breath, head snapping toward the reception desk. A mother clutched her child tighter. A man with headphones yanked them off. Phones lifted into shaky hands, red recording lights blinking. At the center of it all stood Jamal, clutching his left arm in a blood-stained sling, his chest heaving, sweat glistening down his temple. He had stumbled in after a car accident, barely able to stand, but the woman behind the desk wasn't offering help. She was pointing at the door, her lips curled with disgust. "You don't belong here," Nurse Jenkins hissed, her voice sharp and cutting. "You people think you can walk in and demand treatment. Not tonight, not here. Fill out the form or leave." Jamal's stomach churned. His arm throbbed like fire. His ribs screamed with every shallow breath, but the pain in her words burned deeper. He stared at the clipboard lying on the counter, dropped there when his injured hand failed him. His fingers twitched helplessly. "I can't. My arm," he said hoarsely. His voice cracked, but he forced it steady. "I was in an accident. Please, I need a doctor." She leaned forward, lowering her voice so it dripped with venom, though every person in the waiting area could still hear. "Then wait. All night if you have to. Or go somewhere else. Either way, I'm not moving you ahead of people who actually matter." The room froze. Gasps rippled through the waiting area. Jamal swallowed hard. His chest burned with humiliation, with fury, with the crushing weight of being denied care, not because of his injuries, but because of who he was. And then, slowly, shakily, he straightened his back. "I'm not leaving," he said, his voice louder this time, echoing in the sterile room. The nurse's eyes narrowed into slits. Her finger jabbed toward the door like a weapon. "Then watch me make you." The silence after her words was deafening. The buzz of fluorescent lights above seemed louder, the hum of the vending machine sharper. Everyone in the waiting room was still, caught between disbelief and outrage. Jamal's good hand gripped the counter until his knuckles went white. His arm throbbed inside the sling, pain radiating through his ribs, but he didn't back down. "I told you," he said, his voice cutting through the room, "I'm not leaving." From the far corner, a man in work boots muttered, "He's bleeding. Can't she see that?" His phone tilted higher, recording now without shame. The nurse's glare turned on the man, then back at Jamal. "If you won't leave, then sit, but don't expect me to lift a finger." Her words were ice. Her tone wasn't just dismissal, it was punishment. Jamal's chest heaved. He thought about his mother, how she always told him to stay calm, don't give them an excuse. He thought about the accident, the way the car spun, the crack in his ribs with every breath. He thought about the way she had said, "You people," and how the entire room had heard it. "No," he said louder. His voice rang against the sterile walls. "You're going to do your job. You're going to check me in like every other patient." Murmurs swept the waiting area. A young woman with a stroller whispered, "He's right." An older man leaned forward in his chair, shaking his head at the nurse. Her cheeks flushed, but she forced a cold laugh. "Don't tell me how to do my job. You want care? Prove you deserve it." Jamal's jaw tightened. "Care isn't something you deserve. It's something you give. It's your job." That was when she snapped. Her hand slammed against the desk, rattling the keyboard. "Security," she shouted, her voice cracked with fury. "Get this man out of here before I have him arrested for trespassing." Gasps filled the room. A child started crying. Phones tilted higher, zooming in on her face twisted with rage. Jamal's legs felt weak. but he locked them in place. "Call whoever you want," he said, his voice steady despite the storm inside him. "I'm not leaving. This is a hospital, and I need help. And everybody here can see exactly what you're doing." The waiting room erupted in whispers. "She's gonna regret this. Unbelievable. Keep recording." The nurse faltered for a second, her eyes darting around at the glowing phones, the dozens of witnesses. But pride or hatred pushed her forward. She grabbed the desk phone, dialing fast. "This is Nurse Jenkins at reception. I need security at the ER front desk, now." Her voice shook, not with fear, but with rage. The call ended. She smirked at Jamal, her lips curling into something sharp and ugly. "Let's see how brave you are when they drag you out." Jamal's stomach tightened, his breath shallow. His arm burned, his ribs screamed, but his voice didn't waver. "I'll be right here."
The double doors at the far end of the ER swung open with a metallic slam. Two uniformed security guards stepped through, their radios crackling faintly. The taller one, with a shaved head and a thick build, scanned the room immediately, his eyes locking on Nurse Jenkins, who stood rigid at the desk, arms crossed like a judge waiting for punishment to fall. "There," she barked, pointing at Jamal. "That man is causing a disturbance. Remove him." Gasps filled the room again. Patients sat up straighter, phones raised higher. Jamal felt the heat of every camera lens on him, the weight of every whisper, but he didn't flinch. His sling was soaked with blood now, pain radiating down his side, yet his voice was calm when he spoke. "I walked in here after a car accident. My arm could be broken. My ribs might be fractured. All I asked for was help. And she," he pointed with his good hand, his voice rising, "told me to leave because of who I am." The security guards froze. The taller one shifted his gaze to the nurse, his brow furrowing. "Is that true?" Her face flushed. "Of course not. He's lying. He's aggressive. He's loud. She stopped, realizing too late that her words were being talked by a dozen cameras. "Check your recordings," a man in the waiting area called out. He held his phone high, its red recording light blinking. "We've got it all. Every word." The younger guard glanced around, his jaw tightening as he noticed how many phones were out. Practically the entire waiting room had become a wall of witnesses. The taller guard sighed. "Ma'am, we can't just remove him if he's injured." Nurse Jenkins slammed her palm against the desk again, her voice shrill. "He's faking it. He dropped the clipboard on purpose. He's making a scene. This is what they do, always playing the victim." A chorus of gasps erupted. The young mother with the stroller stood, outrage flashing in her eyes. "You did not just say that." An older man near the back added, "Lady, you're done. Everyone here heard you." Phone zoomed in, capturing every flicker of fear that crossed Jenkins' face. Jamal's knees wobbled, but he leaned harder on the counter, his voice steady despite the ache in his chest. "I told you, I'm not leaving. You can drag me out bleeding if that's what you want, but the whole world will see exactly what you did." The waiting room erupted into murmurs of support. "He's right. Stay strong, brother. We're with you." The younger guard stepped closer to Jenkins, lowering his voice but still audible. "Ma'am, you need to back off before this gets worse. The hospital director isn't gonna like this." Her face twisted with panic and fury. "The hospital won't believe him. I've been here 20 years. My word matters more than his." And then, as if summoned by fate itself, the glass doors at the front of the ER hissed open again. A woman in a dark suit stepped inside, her heels clicking sharply against the tile. She was tall, poised, with silver streaks in her hair pulled neatly into a bun. Her ID badge caught the light. Dr. Angela Moore, hospital director. The waiting room went silent. Dr. Moore's eyes swept across the room. The raised phones, the bloodied young man standing tall at the counter, and the nurse glaring with venom. And then her gaze locked on Jenkins. "What?" Dr. Moore said, her voice calm but slicing through the silence like a blade. "What is going on here?" The room froze as Dr. Angela Moore stepped forward, the sharp click of her heels echoing like a gavel striking wood. She carried herself with the weight of someone who had seen every kind of emergency, every kind of chaos. But what she saw now made her jaw tighten. "Someone explain," she said, her voice even but commanding. "Right now." Nurse Jenkins straightened instantly, her face shifting into false innocence. "Dr. Moore, thank goodness you're here. This man," she pointed at Jamal, her tone dripping with practiced authority, "burst in here, demanding to be seen immediately. He's loud, disruptive, and refusing to follow procedure. I was only trying to keep order." A murmur rippled through the waiting area. Dozens of eyes rolled, dozens of phones tilted closer. Jamal stood silent, blood staining his sling, his chest rising and falling with shallow breaths. He didn't need to speak. The room was ready to. "Liar!" a voice rang out from the back. A young man in a hoodie stood, holding up his phone. "I recorded everything. He walked in hurt, and she told him to leave, said he didn't belong here." Another voice joined, trembling with outrage. "I heard her. She said you people. Twice." The crowd stirred, voices overlapping. "We all heard it. It's on video. She told him to get out." Dr. Moore lifted her hand, silencing the noise, but her eyes never left Jenkins. "Is that true?" The nurse's face flushed crimson. "Of course not. They're exaggerating. They're twisting my words. You know me, Dr. Moore. 20 years at this desk. Do you really think I would—" "Yes." The single word cut like a blade. It didn't come from Dr. Moore. It came from Jamal. His voice wasn't loud, but it carried through the entire waiting room like thunder. He shifted his weight, leaning heavily on the counter, his good hand gripping the folder at his side. Sweat dripped down his brow, his ribs screamed, but his eyes were locked on Jenkins, unflinching. "Yes, you would," he repeated, his tone steel. "Because you already did. You looked me in the eye and told me I didn't belong. You told me I should wait all night. You told me I should leave bleeding in the street. And you said it in front of every single person here." The room held its breath. Dr. Moore turned her gaze slowly back to Jenkins. Her lips trembled, words forming but dying in her throat. Her armor of authority was cracking with every second of silence. "Security," Dr. Moore said calmly. The guard straightened. "Escort Nurse Jenkins to my office, now." A gasp shot through the crowd. Phones zoomed in. Jenkins' eyes widened, panic flashing. "Wait, please, you don't understand. Now." Dr. Moore's tone left no room for argument. The guards stepped forward, one to each side of Jenkins, her face twisted into something between fury and fear, her voice cracking as she pleaded, "Angela, don't do this. I was protecting procedure. He was aggressive. He dropped the clipboard. Enough." This time, Dr. Moore's voice shook the walls. Jenkins flinched as though struck. The guards guided her away, her protests echoing down the hall until the doors swallowed her voice. The waiting room was silent again, except for the soft hum of phones still recording. Dr. Moore turned, her eyes softening as they fell on Jamal. "You," she said gently. "Come with me. Let's get you treated." Relief washed over him like water over fire. His knees wobbled, but he stood tall, his good hand clutching the folder at his side. Sweat dripped down his brow, his ribs screamed, but his eyes were locked on Jamal, unflinching. Then he followed her past the desk, into the hallway beyond.
Behind him, the waiting room erupted. Cheers, clapping, voices shouting, "Stay strong, man," and "We got it all on camera." And for the first time that night, Jamal felt the weight shift off his shoulders.
The hallway beyond the reception desk smelled faintly of antiseptic and freshly mopped floors. Nurses in navy scrubs hurried past, pushing carts, checking charts, focused on their work. But as Jamal walked beside Dr. Angela Moore, every pair of eyes flicked toward him, then quickly toward her. The presence of the hospital director carried weight, and they knew something serious had just happened at the front desk. Dr. Moore stopped at the first available triage room, holding the door open for him. "Sit down here, Mr. Williams." Jamal lowered himself carefully onto the padded chair, a groan escaping his throat as pain radiated through his ribs. His blood-stained sling stuck to the fabric of his shirt. Sweat glistened on his brow. He had held himself tall in the waiting room, but now the exhaustion hit like a wave. Dr. Moore placed a firm hand on his shoulder. "You don't have to fight anymore. You're safe here." For the first time since the accident, Jamal let out a shaky laugh, half relief, half disbelief. Safe in a hospital. Crazy that I had to prove I even belonged. Her jaw tightened, but her eyes softened. "I know, and it won't be ignored." Moments later, a young black doctor in a white coat entered the room, stethoscope around his neck. "I'm Dr. Horace. Let's take care of that arm." His voice was warm, steady. He knelt to examine the sling, his gloved fingers moving gently but quickly. Jamal winced as Harris prodded the injury. "Possible fracture," the doctor muttered. "We'll get x-rays immediately. And your ribs, we'll check those too." As the doctor worked, Dr. Moore stood in the corner, her arms crossed, her expression unreadable. But her presence was grounding, like a shield. Meanwhile, back in the waiting room, the atmosphere had changed completely. Patients were buzzing with conversation, showing each other clips of what they'd recorded, whispering about the nurse being escorted out. "Did you hear her say, 'you people'?" one woman muttered. "Got it on video," a man replied, tapping his phone. "It's going viral tonight." When Dr. Moore returned 15 minutes later, leaving Jamal in the doctor's care, the room fell silent again. All eyes turned to her. She stopped at the front desk, empty now without Nurse Jenkins, and placed both hands firmly on the counter. "I want to address what you all witnessed tonight. What happened here was unacceptable. A patient came in seeking help, and instead of receiving care, he was met with prejudice and humiliation. That is not who we are. That is not what this hospital stands for." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the room. Phones lifted again, recording every word. "The nurse responsible has been removed from duty. There will be a full investigation and consequences will follow. But let me be clear, every person who walks through these doors deserves care, deserves dignity. And if anyone is denied that, you come directly to me." Applause broke out, soft at first, then louder, until the waiting room echoed with clapping hands and voices of support. Some patients stood, cheering. Others wiped away tears. And just as the applause peaked, the triage door opened. Jamal emerged, his arm now wrapped in a clean temporary cast, his ribs bound tightly with gauze. He looked pale, but stronger, his shoulders straight, his gaze steady. The room erupted again. People clapped louder, phones zoomed in, strangers called out encouragement. "Stay strong, brother. We got your back. Don't let them break you." Jamal paused at the threshold, the sound washing over him. He glanced at Dr. Moore, who gave him a small nod. Then he raised his good hand slightly, a gesture of quiet acknowledgement to everyone watching. His voice carried, low but strong. "Thank you for seeing me, for standing with me. They wanted me out, but I'm still here." Cheers roared louder, echoing down the sterile hallways of the ER, louder than any siren, more powerful than any prejudice. Jamal turned and walked out of the waiting room, his head held high, his dignity intact. And behind him, the woman who had tried to break him was gone. But the truth of what happened remained, captured on dozens of phones, ready to spread far beyond the hospital walls.